There is near my house a wonderful path. Now, it is not grand. In fact, it hasn't been landscaped or anything like that. It's down at the bottom of a hill. It's mostly mulch and mud. It follows and creates a track right beside this little creek that sneaks through at the bottom of the hill. It's a floodplain. The track is there because there are sewer lines. It is not grand, but it is the peaceable kingdom to me. This path that I walk most days has wonderful memories for me. I worked at a church in town, and I would walk it morning and afternoon with my son in his stroller, kicking along with his feet, eating his snacks as I would point out the birds. It's also the place where he learned to swim, believe it or not, this little swimming hole in this side creek, because it was COVID. Now, I don't think I would have let him swim in the polluted waters of an urban creek, but it was COVID. All the swimming pools were closed. Kids had to get out. And so he learned to stick his head in that dirty water, to kick his feet, and to make it across. There was even a little waterfall right by the swimming hole. One time I was out walking, and a hawk flew so close to me that I heard it coo like a baby. And another time, it was 4th of July, my husband and I were walking before it got too late, and the birds were so disoriented because of the fireworks that we walked right directly under 3 barred owls who were just circling their heads and hooting up a storm. And those were just the big moments that I remember. Mostly, walking in nature is just about finding small things that change minutely. You know, the Japanese have a term for this walking in nature. It's forest bathing. And studies actually show that 20 minutes among the trees can lower our cortisol levels, decrease blood pressure, and improve mood. I believe it. There's something about the rhythm of the natural world. It slows us down. It makes us look for small things. It cycles over and over. It's good for our bodies, our brains, our souls to remember the deep peace of the wild things. So one of the things that I noticed over the years on this path was a tree. At the end of the path, it's over by the other part of the park that is a little more developed. There's some swing sets, there's a pedestrian bridge, and there was a tree that was leaning over the path. And so the city came and cut it down, afraid that it might fall onto people, but they left the stump. You know, it's harder and it costs more to remove a stump. We probably all know that if we're dealing with yards. That could have been why they left it, save a little money. But I like to think that there was a city park ranger who at that meeting saved the day and said, well, don't you know that stumps, also known as snags, are great habitats for the environment? And so that stump stood at the edge of the path for years. Nothing particularly exciting going on. I'm sure there was fungus growing, and I hear that snags collect water, so on dry days, salamanders and insects can go in there and take baths. But mostly that stump just sat. Until one day, probably over years, there was a shoot springing up from the middle of that stump. It was fed by the decaying nutrients that surrounded it. And it grew, and it grew, and it grew over the years. It was strong. It sent down roots. I still see that tree sprouting out of that huge stump. It was strong. It was lithe. It bent. It had leaves that were feathered and floated in the breeze. And one day, it had grown so much that the stump around it just melted away. So there was no longer a stump, but a new tree in its place, nourished by the roots. A shoot had sprung forth. Now, I don't know if the prophet Isaiah had seen such a similar thing, but in our reading for today, this prophet, who was a prophet of the court who spoke to kings, turns his attention to the people of Judah. And he reminds them of this thing that we see in the natural world, this different pace. He is writing at a terrible time for the people of Judah. We are familiar with the picture of peace that he paints. The lion lying down with the lamb, the little baby playing with the adder. But the reason he offers that kingdom of peace is because the people of Judah to whom he writes are living in a war-torn land. Prophets also say things like, the day of calamity has come, and it had. The nations around Judah had been at war with the kingdom of Assyria, a mighty empire, and Assyria had beaten them, and they were now vassal states. And Judah had relied on their own king, and their own king was an unfortunate and an unfaithful leader. He was looking for salvation in all the wrong spots. And so the real possibility, the reality of all that they had to fear was on their doorstep. Death, violence, starvation, struggle, loss of freedom. And in earlier chapters, Isaiah says to them, God's anger has not turned away from you. And they know that. They believe that. They are experiencing that. They see that. But then in this chapter, he says something a little different, doesn't he? He dreams a kingdom of peace for them. And when he says that there will be a day of lions lying with lambs, when he says that he believes they will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. When he tells them a shoot shall come up out of the stump of Jesse and a branch shall grow out of its roots, he is asking them to believe, even in the midst of their despair, that there will be light that comes in the darkness, that there is hope for them. This is the Advent message, after all. These are the scriptures that we receive every year. This is the story that we know that light will shine in the darkness, that we wait with hope, that God will be enfleshed, that God will be with us in all our wilderness, our barrenness, our deserts, our fears, that God will come and meet us there. Hope in the midst of despair. Maybe it's because Advent comes year after year. But we begin to say this so often that we hope in the midst of despair that it can become trite, lose some of its mystery. So that's why I'm unpacking this context of Isaiah for us today. Advent hope is when you are sitting surrounded by armies, when you have seen destruction and death at your door. Advent says there is still a little bit of hope for you there. Advent hope is when you are a nation that has not beaten its demons, that is reliving them, that is arming up, that is gearing for a fight, but still yet holds on to life and liberty and justice for us all. This is Advent hope. Advent hope is when you are a church in a denomination that is on the decline, losing half of its membership and more of its churches. Advent hope is when you do 40 funerals to every baptism. And yet there is good news to share. Advent hope is when we as individuals deal with our same selves year after year. The same insecurity, the same fear, the same loneliness, the same addiction, the same trauma coming up for us in our wilderness again and again. And Advent hope is there. In our wilderness, God meets us. Y'all know I like to listen to podcasts, anything for this commute, friends. There's a podcast called Pulpit Fiction, and yes, it does play a rendition of the Pulp Fiction theme song in the opening credits. But it's great. Two pastors, Eric Fisler, Rob McCoy, they are from the Midwest. They are wonderful thinkers, theologians, and also very practical about what people in the pews might want to hear. And so when they wrestle with this passage, with the passage from Isaiah, they really think about that stump, the stump and the shoot. And they say it's a really good text because we gather around it globally, we gather around it communally, we gather around it individually. And Eric Fisler says, some days I feel when I'm reading the news like we are the stump of a community that we had the potential to be. We can feel like this individually because of things that have happened to us, things that we have done. We can feel like there is nothing worthy left. We can sit back and lament what could have been but didn't become. And yet, this passage reminds us that there is something inviolable in creation that God will not let die. That there is hope in the midst of despair. I love it when he boils it down to this. He says, we do not come to confession to hear what a terrible, awful stump we are. But we come to confession to hear that God is growing in us now glory, hope, peace. Even now, a shoot springs forth. This message is Advent. And year after year, we hear this news, and we believe it, we grasp it, we hope it, we dream it, and we need it. Year after year after year. I'll close with a story of nuns in a group text. You all know that I'm part of a women's group that has met with nuns for 5 years now. And what a gift that this group has been for me. And we are all on a group text, and it's fun. It's mostly sharing prayer requests and book recommendations. And there are quite a few gardeners on there. A lot of the women in this group, it was a mid-career ministry group, and that was 5 years ago. And then after COVID, a lot of them have retired. So they have a lot of time for their gardens now. And various tips on the landscape and taming the wilderness come out in this text. Recently, one of our sisters wrote and said she was making Advent candles out of beeswax. She was a Baptist pastor up in Gainesville, recently retired, and she keeps bees. And so she had beeswax. She sent us a picture of a huge vat of wax dyed purple with a thermometer sticking out, and she asked Sister Mary for any tips. Sister Mary, who had made many candles before, wrote back to say, you guys can take notes on this if you have a vat brewing at home. She said, you heat the wax hot enough to melt it all, then take it off the stove to cool, but just enough, all caps, just enough, until it will not melt the Pringles can. And then you pour it. It is, she said, easier to pour into votive glass containers, no waiting then. But Tamara replies, Sister Mary, thanks for the guidance. Since these are Advent candles, I guess waiting is to be expected. And Sister Mary, most things in nature are not instant. And so, friends, whatever our wilderness, whatever our landscape, may we feel the comfort and the hope and the clarity of returning to this Advent message year after year after year. May we nurture new shoots even out of the stumps, even out of us, even today. May God be the glory, time without end. Amen.